We can continue. So this is the last verse we discussed. Dat Anyatve Majananta Shudnabhya Bhashti Te Visranti Vamritum Shutaparayam. Again, there are those who, although not conversant in spiritual knowledge, begin to worship the Supreme Person upon hearing about him from others, because their tendency to hear from authorities. They can also transcend the path of birth and death. So, Srila Prabhupada made this point in there's at universities no department that deals with the knowledge of the difference between the soul and the body. So he also writes in this purport, in modern society there is no education about the spiritual philosophy of life. Therefore, the recommended process for spiritual realization is to hear from authorities, and especially hearing the mantra. This helps one transcend this material existence and go back to Godhead. So hearing daily Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, and the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So, now Krishna, at the end now, Krishna will, in the last section, summarize that those who understand this difference between the body and the soul and the super soul, that and who know this process of liberation, they can attain the supreme goal. That now text 27. Yavatsan yayate kinchit sattvam stavra janganam satrak satraya samyogat tatvidi bharatarshava. O chief of the Bharatas, know that whatever you see in existence, both the moving and the non-moving, is only a combination of the field of activities and the knower of the field. So whatever is created is that combination between the living entity and material nature. So one with spiritual vision sees that, 518. Vidya Vinaya Sampane Brahmana Kavrasti Sunishev Pandita Sadamachta. Sorry, Vidya Vinaya Sampane Brahmana Kavrasti Sunishev Swapandisa. What is the Vidya Vinaya Sampane Brahmana Kavri? Vidya Vinaya Sampane Brahmana Kavri Hastam. Sunishev Swapakecha, Pandita Sadamarashta, Pandita Samadakshana, with equal vision. One sees the soul in the heart of a Brahman, the soul in the heart of a dog eater, in an elephant. The spiritual vision. One sees the soul in the plants, in the trees, so that is seeing that combination between matter and spirit, and that is spiritual vision. Everything is a combination of living entity and material nature. Yeah. Vidya Vinaya Sampane Brahmana Kav Hasti Sunishev Swapakecha Pandita Samadakshana. So this combination is affected, is done by the Supreme Lord. Therefore, is the controller of the material nature and the spiritual nature, the living entity, and is the controller of the living entity and of material nature. That will be more detailed explained in the 15th chapter. At the end is the Trisloka Gita, where Krishna says there are the liberated souls and the conditioned souls, two living entities. And some are in the spiritual world, some are here, liberated and conditioned. But then in the next verse he says, but I'm above both and I control both. So whether you are in the spiritual world or in the material world, you are under control of Krishna's energy, either the spiritual energy or the material energy, but you are always under control of his energies. Of course, in the spiritual world, we have more freedom. This combination is affected by the Supreme Lord, therefore is the controller of both the superior and inferior nature. Material nature is created by him, and the superior nature is placed in the material nature. And thus all these activities are manifested, are taking place. Now I want to go to the quotes. There's one quote in all this section, only one, and it's not a big one, so we will read it here. Someone can read this quote. No, that's 28 and 27. Yeah, 27. There is no quote for 27, it's for 28. So we'll wait a bit, come back for that. That's for the next. We'll first read 28. Saman sarvesha bhuteshu tishtanam parameshvara vinasyats avinasyatam yapashasa pashyati. One who sees the super soul accompanying the individual soul in all bodies, and who understands that neither soul nor super soul within the destructible body is ever destroyed, actually sees that neither the soul nor the super soul within the body is actually destroyed. So that is spiritual vision. That's anyone who by good association can see these three things combined together, the body, the proprietor of the body, and the individual soul, and the friend of the individual soul, super soul. It's actually knowledge. A little further, after the destruction of the body, both the soul and the super soul exist, and they go eternally in many various moving and non-moving forms. So it's the process of transmigration, which will be explained again in the 15th chapter of the Gita, verses 8 and 9 there, that how this transmigration works, how under the supervision of the super soul, the soul is brought with the subtle body to its next destination. That we will hear more in the 15th chapter. That now we can read our quote. Someone wants to read the quote?
I can read it, Maharaj.
Please do. Thank you.
Sarvam sarvese bhuttesu. That I have explained so many times. If you materially see either a dog or a big brahmana, the body is composed of the same material. When you dissect either body, you find the same blood, the same muscle, the same bone. That's all. That is material, and spiritually they are Atman. Therefore, sama darsinaha. Not that he is seeing a brahmana and dog as equals. He is seeing both the outward and the inward. Inward is spirit, that is one, and outward matter, that is one. Dr. Patel said, another is Sunu Chaiva Svapake Cha, which Prabhupada responds, yes, that is the same thing, because he does not see the form, he sees the ingredients. just like there are so many earthen pots, dolls. So any sane man knows that these are all made of earth. That's all. That vision is wanted. But these rascals are thinking, I am American, I am Indian, I am a Brahmana, I am Kshatriya, I am fat, I am this, I am that. Therefore, they are imperfect.
Yes, thank you so much. See now our slides for this section. That was the previous one, previous section. Now this one. Yeah, 26, 23, just have to see. This was the last one. Just I check here. Okay. It's this one. Just a moment. Yeah, there. Yeah. So that's the verse we just read. Knowledge means to see how the soul and supersoul are situated within the body. Now we go to text 29. Samam pashammi sarvatra samavastinam ishvaram nainasyatmanatmanam tattoyati param gatim. One who sees the supersoul equally present everywhere in every living being does not degrade himself by his mind, thus he approaches the transcendental destination that the Srila Prabhupada, that's 29. Yeah. He writes, the mind is generally addicted to sense gratification processes, but when the mind turns to the supersoul, one becomes advanced in spiritual understanding. So we heard that was the goal of the yogis in 6, 7, I think, that Siddhartma Prasantasma Paramatma Samahita. So when the mind becomes peaceful, one finds the supersoul in the heart, but the mind is only peaceful when the addiction for sense gratification is gone. That's the purification part. Then one finds the soul, the supersoul. But one can also take shelter of because acting in Krishna consciousness means following the dictations of the supersoul within. But if we are addicted to sense gratification, we don't hear the supersoul. But we can hear Bhagavad Gita. It's the same knowledge Krishna given. And by hearing Bhagavad Gita, we become advanced in knowledge also. So we have here 29. 29. So one sees Paramatma in every being. One moves beyond the influence of Maya into transcendence. That means we see others as a spirit soul, and we see the super soul in their heart. It means we have to learn to deal with them as a soul, not as the body. And that's a big point to learn. And now we come to this enigmatic verse that verse 30. 30, I say enigmatic because it's in the conditioned state, this is very difficult to understand. Prakritcheva sakarmani kriyamani sarvasa yapasatu tatatmanam akartaram sapashati. One can see that all activities are performed by the body, which is created of material nature, and that the self does nothing actually cease. So we heard that before in the fifth chapter, verses 8 to 12, 8, 9. Naiva kinchit komite yuktman yeta tatvavit, pasanshi panch pisanshihan asnangasans vapansva sampalapam kichamginam unmitam nimisamasi indiachtisu vartateti Darian, a person in the divine consciousness, sees the soul and the super soul. Although engaged in seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, eating, moving about, sleeping, and breathing, always knows in himself that he actually does nothing at all. He does nothing at all. Because while speaking, evacuating, receiving, or opening or closing his eyes, he always knows that only the material senses are engaged with their objects, and that he is aloof from them. So the self does nothing, the soul desires. And the super soul arranges to reciprocate with the desire of the soul according to what one deserves. So I desire to speak now, and because Krishna, or the super soul, is willing, my lips are moving and you are hearing it. So by that we can see every moment the soul working, the super soul in action. And we are not doing on the material platform, we desire. We are the karta, one of these 5 factors. That's how we do things. But on the level of material nature, the soul does do nothing at all. So whatever one is supposed to do, either for happiness or for distress, one is forced to do because of bodily constitution. The self, however, is outside all these bodily activities. We are forced. You must pass stool, you must go to the toilet. You are forced to do that. You are hungry, you must eat. You are forced to do that. But it's not we that are doing these things. So the body is a machine designed by the Supreme Lord to fulfill desires. Because of desires, one is put into circumstances to suffer or to enjoy. More suffering than enjoyment. The body is practically a machine to give you pain. And absence of pain is our happiness. This is, yeah. So, of course, this verse that we just read is a further explanation we find in verse 21, the first verse we quoted, well, the second verse we quoted. Kaya karna kartit fe hetur pakti uchati, pusha sukha dukhanam bhaktit fe hetur uchati. So nature is said to be the cause of all causes and effects. And that is explained in this verse that we just read, that all activities of the body are created by material nature. That's how material nature is the cause and effect. That's the further explanation, this verse of verse 21. That we go to the slides again. Yeah. So the material body is a machine designed by the Supreme Lord to fulfill desires of the living entity. The self, however, is outside all bodily activities. So we will hear in the 18th chapter where Krishna says, Ishvara Sharva Bhutanam Ritisaruna Tistati Brahmayam Sayama Bhutanam Yantra Rodai Maya. So I'm seated in the hearts of all living entities, and I control all the wanderings of the living entities who are seated in a machine made of material energy. A yantra, a machine. And I firmly in the heart are controlling everything. That is a machine which Krishna controls. That and it's a machine meant to fulfill our material desires. But that ends always up in frustration. Krishna does not want it, therefore he gives us this frustration, that happiness and distress. That good. Then we go to text 31. Yada bhuta pitach bhavam ekastam napashyati tataiva savishtaram brahma sampajyate tata. When a sensible man ceases to see different identities due to different material bodies, and he sees how beings are expanded everywhere, he attains to the Brahman conception. So that if you see only the outer material body, that's material vision, it's not actual vision. So the spirit soul, due to contact with material nature, get different types of bodies. That and one can see that this, when one can see this, his dog as a material body because of his activities in his previous life, that or this chicken, that or this man, or this monkey, that when one can see that they are spirit souls, one becomes free from these differentiations like man, animal, big, low, and that is purifying our consciousness. By that we can develop Krishna consciousness in our spiritual identity. So this is 31. That so if we then look at the slides, that here, when with spiritual vision sees how the various bodies of the living entities arise due to the different desires of the individual soul. Yet the soul is eternal and has nothing to do with such bodies. That text 32 and 33. Anaditvam nirgunatvat paramatyam avyayam. Coming on the screen. Sarirasto pikantyo na karoti na lipyate. Those with the vision of eternity can see that the imperishable soul is transcendental, eternal, and beyond the modes of nature. Despite contact with the material body or Arjuna, the soul neither does anything nor is entangled. So, in the Srila Prabhupada writes, the living entity is eternal, is not born, and in spite of his being situated in the material body, is transcendental and eternal. That we heard in 220 already of Bhagavad Gita. Text 33. Yat sarvagatam sakshmyat akasham no palipyate sarvatro vastito de tatatma no palipyate. Here Krishna gives an analogy. that the sky, due to its subtle nature, does not mix with anything. Although it is all-pervading, similarly, the soul, situated with Brahman vision, does not mix with the body, though situated in that body. Srila Prabhupada makes the point, yes, with our material eyes, we cannot see the living entity within the body and how it's going out of the body after the destruction of the body. So that requires transcendental knowledge, transcendental vision, that it does not mix with the body. We are not coming in contact with material nature, the soul. The soul becomes, the consciousness of the soul becomes contaminated by the material nature. And therefore we think ourselves a material product. That's why this Bhakti Bhakti Jangunam, this contamination of consciousness comes. But the soul doesn't die, doesn't take birth, is not affected at all. That in our mind we suffer so much. But it's the mind who suffers, and we are not the mind. It's because we are identified with the mind, we think it's our suffering. Not easy to understand in a conditioned state, but that's the reality. That now text 34. 34 is a good verse for preaching. It's a verse many times quoted by Prabhupada and so. It's explains the situation of the soul in the body and how we can perceive the soul in the body. Text 34. Yata pakashat sheka krichnam lokam imam bravi kshetram shatri tata krichnam pakashyati bharata. O son of Bharat, as the sun alone illuminates all this universe, so does the living entity, one within the body, illuminate the entire body by consciousness. So we see the soul is in the heart, and it spreads its influence all over the body through the bloodstream. The consciousness is transported. And by that we feel, we are aware of our body. Something goes wrong with our toe, we feel. It's because of the bloodstream and the consciousness there. So this consciousness is the proof of the presence of the soul. When the soul is present in the body, there is consciousness all over the body. As soon as the soul has passed from the body, there is no more consciousness. Therefore, consciousness is not a product of the combination of matter. It's a symptom of the living entity. But the supersoul, which is situated in all bodies as the friend of the individual soul, is conscious of all bodies, of all pervading of everything. That is the difference between the supreme consciousness and the individual consciousness. That if we look now at the slides, the consciousness is a symptom of the presence of the soul within the body. So the soul, however, can only be conscious of one body, whereas the supersoul knows all bodies because it stays in everyone's heart as a friend. Good. Now, that was the example of the sun. The sun spreads its influence all over the universe, gives light. So the soul in the heart gives light or consciousness to the entire body. Now text 35, which is the last verse of this chapter. Kshetra kshetra yogivam anantam jnana sakshusha buddha bhakti moksham sa ye vidur yanti te param. Those who see with eyes of knowledge the difference between the body and the knower of the body can also understand the process of liberation from bondage in material nature, attained to the supreme goal. That I'll bring it on the screen. Yeah, yeah. So, two things Krishna says. With the, you see the difference between the body and the knower of the body, the kshetra and the kshetra. And you understand also the process of liberation. Stop this Bhakti, Bhakti Jangunam, not trying to enjoy any more material nature, but act as a servant of Krishna, as a spirit soul. That with love, with the intention of please Krishna, to please Krishna. That's the path of liberation. Then one can attain the supreme goal. Srila Prabhupada writes, the spiritual master by various instructions teaches his students how to get free from the material concept of life. One can understand that this body is matter. It can be analyzed in 24 elements that we analyzed before. But over and above this, there is the soul, and there is also the super soul, the 24th and the 25th and the 26th element. The soul and the super soul are two. These things are meant for contemplation and realization, and one should have a complete understanding of this chapter with the help of a spiritual master. That we have here. The last verse. By accepting a spiritual master and hearing submissively from him, one can understand how the whole material manifestation is a combination of the soul and the material elements under the supervision of the Supreme Lord. One can thus be transferred to the spiritual world. So, this is chapter 13. We discussed six subject matters, etc., the body, the kshetrajna, two kshetrajnas, the soul and the super soul. We discussed the process of knowledge, jnana, the process of knowledge, difference between, and there were 20 items, knowledge, and two were most important, accepting a spiritual master and performing devotional service under the instruction of a spiritual master. And then all the other items we will realize. And then we are in the process of knowledge. And then today we discussed we discussed already last time the Jnana, what is knowable, what can be known in this world, what should we know, is the all-pervading super soul and the soul. That is to be known. We can't see it, but that's what we must know to have knowledge. And then we heard about the super soul and the qualities of the super soul, how it's different from the individual soul. And then we understood how we become entangled in material nature. That we become entangled in material nature by this by this Bhakti Bhakti Jangunam. And we learned also that the nature Karna Karna Kartitve Heter Parti Uchati. All cause and effect in this world is caused by nature. And then we learned the importance of understanding this knowledge for liberation. And we just have to hear from authorities. That will help us to transcend this material nature. And then at the end, Krishna speaks again about the soul. The soul is never entangled in material nature. That everything we see is a combination of the soul and the super soul. That when we sees the super soul in everything, will not be degraded and actually cease. That because everything is performed by the body, is created by material nature. The self does nothing, only desiring. That and when one understands it, that he will not be entangled. That when we understand that the soul is Brahman, does not mix with the body. That with these eyes of knowledge, we can understand the process of liberation and liberate ourselves. So that is Jnana. And in the next chapter, again Jnana, but of a different nature. We heard about Bhakti, Bhakti, Jnana, Gunan. We are controlled by material nature. Yes, because we try to enjoy material nature. Now in chapter 14, we will hear more about this, how material nature factually controls us. And now, how we can get out of this control. So first, before we proceed, any questions about this chapter? Otherwise,